Okay, so welcome to the video on graphing quadratics, last video for this week. So just like before, I mentioned that we had three different forms of quadratics that you will see most of the time in algebra. But the vertex form, we're not going to see that until algebra 2. We're not going to cover that in this class for now. We had done a video on factored form. We did a video on standard form that's factorable, so we turned it into factored form. And now, well, so factored form can turn into standard form can turn back into factored form. So previous videos went over that. But now the question becomes, well, what if it's not factorable? Or what if we don't want to factor it? There is a method for graphing standard form without even going back to factored form. So that's what we're going to explore today, is basically if you get something like this or any other standard form quadratic and you don't want to have to factor it, or you can't factor it. So for example, this one right here, if I was even going to try to factor this one, I'd put a 1 on top, I'd put a 4 on the bottom. What two numbers multiplied via 1 but added before? None that I know of. So at least no whole numbers. So that's not going to work out too well. So let's go ahead and see what we're going to start doing here. The main thing is with just about every single thing that we've been graphing, your vertex is key to a lot of different things. Your vertex is the axis of symmetry, or it gives you the axis of symmetry. It also, from there, you can reflect points over and get some little freebie points, so you don't have to do that much work. So let's say that I gave you a vertex of -2, -3. I haven't given you a quadratic, but let's just say that there was a -2, -3 vertex. So you go up a couple and you get some points. Basically, that would be your vertex. And again, I haven't told you what this is from. This is just some numbers that I made up. So from the vertex, you would get the axis of symmetry. You would plot your other 2 points and then reflect them over. Now you have 5 points and then you're done. So that's basically it. All right. You can get your other 2 points that are reflected over. Makes a nice, neat little symmetry on your table as well. But again, you don't have to make this entire table. Just enough. You just have to use a table for enough work that you need to show how you got those points. And then from there, you would reflect over, so you don't necessarily have to fill in the table. If you do use a table, though, it's nice because you can kind of double check your work. If these x values are spaced evenly from that vertex, your y value should match up like this. Yeah, so that's a nice thing about having symmetry. And then you just draw your parabola, and then that's about it, okay? But how do you know, how do I get the vertex, you might be wondering. Yeah, so I told you that the vertex is key, so okay, Mr. Gary, how do I get the vertex then? So there's a formula for this, and there is a proof for this, but we're not going to get too much into that, otherwise this will turn into a long video again. So when you have standard form, ax squared plus bx plus c, you have this formula to get the x value of the vertex, which is negative b over 2a. So you take your b value, change the sign, that's what the negative means, is change the sign of whatever your b is, and then divide it by double whatever your a value is. And that will actually tell you the x value of your vertex, which is also happens to be your axis of symmetry, or your line of symmetry, okay? So this formula right here, make sure you get it down, negative b over 2a. And this is actually a piece of the quadratic formula that we're going to learn later on. Quadratic formula has a long other piece, but this is a piece of it. So we're going to be adding on to this, but for now, negative b over 2a gets you your x value, your vertex, okay? So you would just figure that part out, and then that would get you your table to start with, and then you just start graphing just like we did in previous videos, okay? So the only new part that we're learning about today is this negative b over 2a part. Let's see how this looks. So we're going to practice finding a, b, and c. We've done this in the past, back when we were factoring. So it's not too big of a jump, but let's go ahead and still practice it. So we need a, b, and c because our formula says negative b over 2a. We don't even need the c part, but it's still good to practice finding it because, like I said, we're going to use it later on. So here are four, I almost miscounted there. Here's 4 different quadratics. What I want you to do is pause the video, see if you can figure out what values your A, B's, and C's are. Okay, so let's start with A. First off, this one right here, it looks like it doesn't have an A, but remember, anytime you don't have a number in front, you don't have a coefficient, you have a coefficient there because you have one of these x squared. So there's a 1 here that you don't necessarily have to write, but you should always know that there's a 1 in front. So I'm going to go ahead and put a 1 there. And then all my A values are in front of x squared. So your coefficient of x squared is your a. So I made up those all green. Oh, forgot that little negative part, but they're all green. Okay, so your a values are going to be these numbers. So a is 7 here, -3 here, 1 is in front of x squared, 4 is in front of x squared. Okay, next up is your b value. Your b value is in front of just your regular old variable, just the x. No x squared, just x. So whatever number is in front of x is your b value. So if I look at all of these, got my x here, got my x here, got my x here, this one is missing an x. So the question becomes, okay, well, this 5x tells me I have 5 x's. This 8x tells me I have 8 x's. I don't have any x's here. So you can think of this like it's, oops, like it's 0x, okay? So 5 is in front of x here, 8 is in front of x here, 2 is in front of x here. We don't have an x, so we can kind of think of it like we have no x's, so 0 x's, right? So your b values are all these red values. And if you're missing an x, you can always put in a 0 to let the people know, hey, that's where my 0 came from when I got my b, right? And last one is c. C is considered what's called a constant. It's the thing that doesn't have a variable. It's just a number, no variable, no x's, no y's next to it. It's just a number. So if I take a look at these, I'm going to turn these all purple. So all the purple ones are the ones that don't even have an x next to it. So those are all my c values, right? So that's how you find your a, b's, and c's. So here's your steps, all right? Your first step is find your a, b, and c. Next step, use negative b over 2a in order for you to get your x value of your vertex. So I'm going to put some blank spots there. Plug in your b on top, plug in your a on the bottom. Okay, so the top is -4, the bottom is 2 times 1 is 2, so -4 over 2, which becomes a -2. Now, what this tells us, what this just gave us, this is our line of symmetry. So this is the line that goes straight up and down. It's going to go through -2. It also tells us where we can start our table, because our table, so I'm going to need a vertex. So I'm going to go ahead and start my vertex on the top. Normally I stick it in the middle, but let's just put the vertex up top. So I know this is going to give me my vertex. So it's going to be, this frame is our equation, the expression that we're plugging into. So I'm going to put -2 first. Remember, this is our vertex that we're finding right now. So my x value of my vertex is a -2. I'm going to plug that in. -2 squared means -2 times -2, which is a +4. 4 times -2 is a -8 plus 1. So 4 minus 8 plus 1. That's 4 minus 8 plus 1. Okay, and just do that out, and you get a -3. Right? Now I'm going to move this over to the side. That way I have some more room to work. You can always rewind this video if you need to figure out where that -2 came from. That's a nice thing about these videos. All right, so I have my vertex. I'm going to go ahead and plot that. So -2, -3. I'm going to plot that in red. So -2, -3 is right here. Now, once I have my vertex, I automatically like to put my axis of symmetry, because then I can kind of better visualize what my parabola is going to look like. All right. So now what I'm going to do is I need 5 points. So far I only have 1. Now you can pick, just like the other video I said, you can pick whatever x values you want because your domain is all real numbers. So pick whatever you want. Just keep in mind, the further you get away from your vertex, the further up your graph will go, so you can get pretty big numbers here. Or if it's an upside down one, you're just going to get really small, okay? So I told you that in the previous videos that one of the easiest numbers to work with is a 0, especially with these standard form equations. Because when you plug in a 0, watch this. So I'm going to put my frame, put my zeros in, and this becomes super, super, super simple, because what is 0 squared? 0 times 0 is 0. What's 4 times 0? Anything times 0 is 0. So you're going to get 0 plus 1, which is just 1. So it ends up being just this c value, your constant term. And that's always going to be that way too, just a little heads up. If you have it in standard form, when you plug in a 0, you're going to get your y-intercept, okay? Okay, so let's plot that. I'm going to do that in purple. 0, 1 is right there. And keep in mind, once you get a point, you can use this axis of symmetry, this line of symmetry, to reflect over and just get another point. All right? There you go. Now, last one. I can pick whatever value I want. And keep in mind though, the further away I get, if I pick some positive numbers, it's probably going to go off my graph because it's going to get bigger. I know that the shape of this is going to go up pretty fast. So I'm not going to mess with these ones over here. Otherwise, I have to start extending my graph out. Probably something a little closer to the vertex, so either -1 or -3. Those would probably be pretty good points to pick. So I'm going to pick -1 for my x. Same thing, plug it into your frame. Blank spots for your x's. Plug in your -1. -1 squared means -1 times -1. 4 times -1 is a -4. And then you get -1, -2. Okay. All right. And then, oh, my dog is barking at me. Gotta hurry. So you have this, reflect over, and now you have your graph. And that's basically it. So if you have any questions, feel free to ask me on my office hours, or feel free to email me. Okay, take care. Bye-bye.